Pokémon UNITE has only been around for 1 year, but it's managed to gather a pretty loyal fan base for bringing a unique angle to the MOBA genre. Considering Pokémon is one of the most popular franchises in the world, and MOBAs make up a sizable chunk of esports, it's not surprising that UNITE has seen moderate success. What is surprising is that it's seen success despite its rather, unfavorable promotions and launch. Despite only being around for 1 year, a lot has changed about the game, and I think it's worth comparing the game at 1 day versus 1 year to see how it has improved and worsened, and if it still deserves all the negative attention around it, or if it ever deserved it at all for that matter. Hello, my name's Taco Titan, and I'm a member of Team Astral Ascendance. I've been playing since day 1, and I've hit Master Top 10,000 in every ranked season thus far. Ever since UNITE came out, it's gotten a lot of negative press for various reasons, and I felt like the 1 year anniversary of the game was a good time to reflect on the negativity surrounding the game and really break it down. If you're a frequent UNITE player, I'm sure none of the information or opinions in this video will be new to you. However, I know that a lot of people were given a very limited impression of what UNITE was when it first released and barely played it or never bothered to touch it at all as a result. If you're one of those people who was left with a bad taste in your mouth, I hope to be the active player to better explain to you what UNITE actually was like when it released and what it's like now after 1 year. When the game initially released and limited information was available, people inside and outside the game were confused as to how the game was actually going to continue to develop over time. Whether it came to initial problems and controversies or the competitive viability of the game, I imagine most people who tapped out in the first week have no idea how everything is shaken up. So let's start with the controversy that came out of the gate swinging. Before I start, I want to be upfront and say that this is the biggest discussion point in this video by far, because it was the first thing UNITE was accused of when the game released and it spread like wildfire. Even though I am biased towards this game, I am critical of the things I love and will not hold back any criticisms in this video, but I am going to start with a mostly defensive stance in trying to clean up some of the debris left from the microtransactions controversy. I imagine a lot of people were first introduced to UNITE through Moist Critical, who was one of the biggest content creators to play the game on day 1. He was also one of the first people to use the term pay to win in regards to UNITE after dumping about $100 into the game to buy item enhancers, which can be used to upgrade held items that boost Pokemon's in-game stats and provide extra effects. Now, it is true that held items are significantly more powerful at levels 20 through 30 than they are at level 1, and typically provide noticeable advantages when fully upgraded. However, looking back at Critical's video a year later, an experienced UNITE player will notice a lot of oddities that make his claim of pay to win feel like a clickbaity stretch. For starters, after purchasing item enhancers, Critical played primarily physical damage dealers like Machamp, Zeraora, and Absol throughout a stream that the video is snipped from. Although there certainly are some games where he ran fairly decent builds with the correct items at max level or near max level, there are also some games where he ran fully upgraded Leftovers or Shell Bell. For those unfamiliar with the UNITE meta, Leftovers is widely considered the single worst item in the game, especially on damage-based Pokemon, and Shell Bell isn't much better, especially considering it's designed for special damage dealers. So even though it's true that Leftovers and Shell Bell are better items when upgraded, they're both pretty much entirely useless no matter what level they're at. On top of that, some of the games featured in the video are very clearly against bots, which are notoriously easy to stomp. Now, bots is a whole other can of worms that will be opened later, but I bring this up to say that the games he showcased weren't exactly the highest quality to prove pay-to-win status. But here's the real kicker. If you go and watch the stream that the video pulls from after he upgrades all of his items, you'll see him lose a lot of games, probably coming in around a 50% win rate with the upgraded items he paid for. One of the games he even used in the video is a game he loses, but he conveniently cut out the second half of the game and the results to just show when he's doing well. This is obviously an extremely in-depth dissection of his video, and I don't think he was maliciously tricking his viewers into thinking that the game is pay to win. He's a content creator who likes to make things as absurd as possible, and showing off a potentially abusable aspect of a game and calling it pay to win is gonna generate some good views. He's not trying to prove a scientific hypothesis here. However, a lot of people who saw this video took it at face value and wrote off the game or review bombed it within the first week, and people still complain about pay to win in UNITE to this day. But this is the thing, UNITE was never pay to win, it was pay to rush. Well, what's the difference? The difference is that the player can spend real money to purchase UNITE licenses that allow them to play the specified Pokemon, as well as items that they're missing and or item enhancers to upgrade those items, and that's about it. Everything else the player can spend real money on is purely cosmetic. Now, paying to upgrade these items certainly seems like it deserves pay to win pay-to-win status, but in actuality, it's a huge waste of money. You see, the game is pretty generous in throwing item enhancers at you, as well as EOS tickets, which can be used to purchase a variety of things, including held items and item enhancers. I've spent about $10 to $15 on battle passes that provide extra item enhancers and EOS tickets, and with that little money, I have every single item upgraded to at least level 20, most of them even at level 30, and level 20 is when a held item's passive ability receives its last upgrade. I also have every Unite license and a large number of coins that I just have to sit on until each new Pokemon release. The game also straight up gives you some items and Unite licenses for free. The free items and licenses is a feature they added a few months after the game's release, so it's understandable if people who don't play the game weren't aware of this change. If you weren't aware of this change though, there's an even bigger change they added at the same time based on community feedback. After complaints of grinding for level 30 items, which is a fair criticism that was and to an extent still is unfun, the development team Teamy added something called Super Item Enhancers, which immediately upgrades a chosen held item to level 30 and refunds all item enhancers previously used on that held item. Through some pretty basic missions, the player is able to receive 3 of these. They've also provided ways to earn temporary upgrades that treat any held items if it were level 30 for a week. Would the game be better if every item didn't need upgrades and just did what it does at level 30 upon purchase? Absolutely. It's an unnecessary part of the game that's simply there to encourage you to keep playing. There's no argument there. However, paying real money to upgrade items a few weeks or a few months sooner can't really be considered pay to win, especially when there's a cap on upgrades and the player very quickly runs out of things to spend money on for an advantage. If they were constantly adding held items to the point where you could never catch up without spending real money, that would be a concern. But since the game's release, Teamy has added a whopping 3 new held items, and that was over half a year ago. I think what overall bothers me about the criticism around this topic is the idea that because it's a Pokemon game that it's a kid's game. I hate to break it to everybody, but Pokemon has been around for 26 years. The player base of every single Pokemon game has a massive age range. Just because the games are rated E does not automatically make them kids games. In fact, when you look at the player base for Unite, or at least the public player base in content creators and professional players, it's almost entirely made of people in their 20s and 30s. Unite has a standard MOBA player base. No, this game does not have predatory microtransactions that target children. The gacha system in this game isn't even all that exciting. I've seen people with hundreds of stockpiled gacha pulls because they're just not that important, or they're waiting for better rewards to be added. And they're not hard to get either, by the way. It's pretty much a 1 out of 10 as far as how gross gacha systems and loot boxes can get. The system has just changed with the new boost emblem mechanic they've introduced in the energy rewards, but it's too early in the update to criticize it. I can only hope that this doesn't lead the game towards microtransactions where people have to pull the lever a bunch of times just to get the one emblem they're looking for. There are aspects of the system that are completely fair to criticize, but the criticism was blown entirely out of proportion, considering a lot of big content creators that likely introduced their audiences to Unite painted the game in a negative light. There is a lot of positive content about Unite, usually from Unite content creators specifically, but nobody outside of the game's circle is going to see these videos, at least not initially. Believe me, I have plenty of other things to criticize about this game and will do so in this video, and microtransactions are at the bottom of the list. Not because everything else is horrid in comparison, but simply because microtransactions have very little impact on the game, and the issue has been significantly improved over the year that the game has been out. Well, this section is going to be considerably shorter than the last. There are bots in the game. When you receive a bot game, anybody who isn't in your lobby, including teammates and enemies, is replaced by bots. This can happen in any game mode, including ranked. This was implemented into the game by Teamy themselves on day 1 to lower queue times. The game will also sometimes give you a bot match in ranked if you've lost a few games in a row. This is a bad system. It is the exact same system 1 year later as it was on day 1. This system should be removed. Speaking of incredibly flawed systems, let's talk about ranked. Like many MOBAs, Unite splits its ranks across various levels, from beginner to great to expert to veteran to ultra to master. Beginner through ultra utilizes a diamond system to move from class to class, while master uses an entirely separate point system. This all seems fairly standard, except for an additional mechanic known as performance points. A player earns performance points as they play ranked from beginner to ultra, receiving more performance points based on how well they do in every game. Once a certain amount of performance points is reached, the player either receives an extra diamond upon winning a game, or is protected from losing a diamond upon losing a game. This sounds like a nice system to help players who do well in their games from being punished because of poor teammates, but in actuality, this system is a nightmare. Because of this system, players can climb up the ranks incredibly easily, even if they lose more games than they win. In fact, a player can climb from beginner to master with a win rate as low as 45%. This should not happen. Master should have to be reached with a consistent win rate of around 55 to 60% so that it actually signifies that you are a master at the game. Instead, all it takes is a few weeks for literally anybody to reach it. The ranked system to reach Master has been the same since day one, and it needs a major overhaul. So let's talk about Master itself then. Even if it is way too easy to reach Master, the point system still continues to separate the good from the great. It tells you if you're within the top 10,000 players globally, and the top 100 players can be viewed by everyone. Again, that's great, but there are problems with Master itself too. When the game first came out, players who reached Master quickly realized that increasing your Master points proved to be much harder than it should have been. A majority of the time, a game win would provide fewer points than a game loss would take away. Players quickly realized then that the easiest way to climb Master was to be in a 5-stack, since for some reason, every form of ranked play is in the same ranked system, both for points and for queues. That's right, 5 stacks can go against a duo queue and trio queue because there is no separate queue. This is still the case, and people have been complaining about it the entire time it's been in the game. Anyways, players quickly realized that you could win much more easily as a 5 stack and receive around the same amount of points per win, if not more. This was an incredibly broken system, and it received a patch about a month into the game. Unfortunately, this patch helped the issue, but didn't fix it. This system remained to be flawed in this manner until about 4 or 5 months in the game, where it received another update. Now, the system was no longer punishing players harder than it was rewarding them, which was good. However, it overcorrected, and way more points were being rewarded upon winning than being taken away upon losing, until the player reaches around 1,800 points. For reference, upon reaching Master, the player starts at 1,200 points. This created a system where people who just play more are rewarded, since they can once again climb with a negative win rate. This was the last update to Master Rank, so this system is still in place. Of course, playing the game more frequently should result in a higher global ranking and more points, but the system doesn't rely enough on win rate to help good players who simply can't play consistently every single day. Not to mention, a vast majority of high-ranked players consistently play in 5 stacks since there is no separation for 5 stacks. So if you primarily play solo, duo, trio, the chances of you being a notable player are slim to none. Finally, I have to point out that ranked uses blind pick like every other game mode, which is not ideal. There have been whispers from data miners of draft pick potentially being brought to Unite, which traditionally in MOBAs involves a ban phase followed by teams picking 1 to 2 characters at a time, with characters being usable only by one team. This creates a lot more diversity from game to game and allows absolutely broken, overpowered characters to be removed from the equation via the ban phase. Blind pick is bad for the health of ranked both short-term and long-term, so hopefully this changes soon. Despite a few updates across the way, the ranked system still leaves a lot to be desired and has remained untouched for a while now as of 1 year in, so hopefully we see some fixes soon. As is tradition for MOBAs, the game has received a lot of updates over the course of the year. The roster of playable characters has almost doubled from 20 to 37, and a plethora of balance changes have been implemented. So how has the quality of these changes been? Meh. So let's start with the quality of the changes themselves. On average, new Pokemon tend to be either overpowered or underpowered. It's very rare for them to hit a sweet spot on release. This isn't inherently bad, considering it's not super uncommon in MOBAs, but the lack of bans or a draft system means that new overpowered Pokemon tend to have 90 to 100% pick rates in ranked in tournaments, which can make the meta incredibly stale. On top of this, simple balance changes that overtune Pokemon can have the same effect. Just a few weeks ago, a public test server was implemented, testing out the next few Pokemon coming to the game, Glaceon and Buzzwole. So hopefully the server helps new Pokemon enter the main server much more balanced than their older counterparts. The real disappointment is the communication around balance updates. Whenever a balance update is brought to the game, Teamy is dead silent until they announce the next update the day before it happens. There's no schedule for updates either, so we never know how long we'll have to wait until the next one. On top of that, most new Pokemon release dates are only known because of leaks. Typically, new Pokemon aren't officially announced until a week or just a few days prior to their release. But then we get a new update. And the patch notes are something else. With each update, Teamy gives us very detailed patch notes describing every single change they made, such as damage increased, or move upgrade, or effect adjusted, or bug fixes. Because the patch notes come in hieroglyphics, the community has to painstakingly test every change noted to figure out how much damage or an effect actually changed, or sometimes what the change even was. Sometimes characters get changed and it isn't even in the patch notes. Numbers and specifics are unfortunately hidden throughout a lot of Unite, to the point where after a year, there are still mechanics that the player base hasn't been able to fully figure out exactly, such as attack speed and movement speed. The fact that still after a year, Teamy doesn't have a department dedicated dedicated to being the bridge between the players and the developers is a major disappointment. Their social media presence is practically non-existent, and it makes understanding the game nearly impossible. This is a change they will have to make soon if they want players to remain invested. People became tired of the last balance update very quickly with the insane buff they gave to Absol, not to mention the fact that the game has revolved around Hoopa since the character got released. If this happens over and over again, people will stop playing. Competitive play got off to a very slow start, only seeing global official sanctioning starting in February of this year. Before then, competitive play was only officially in Japan and completely fan-driven everywhere else in the world. That being said, once it started, the Pokémon UNITE Championship Series has been, for the most part, really good, providing consistent tournaments and cash prizes from Nintendo on a monthly basis. There are some flaws throughout, but overall it has been a good tournament system, with regional tournaments that covered a majority of the globe coming together to see teams from every region face off against one another this August in London. The coverage has been excellent, with notable content creators like Spraggles and Jeff Hoagland getting the consistent opportunities to commentate the games. Overall, the PUCS has done its job of getting players more engaged in playing and watching this game on a competitive esports level, and there is a lot of room for the system to be even better next year. Unfortunately, the game isn't big enough yet for the prize pool money or viewership to be a stable source of income, but a lot of esports organizations have started signing teams ahead of Worlds, so there certainly is interest in the game growing to that level. That covers all the major talking points that have been brought up over the past year. So what's next for UNITE, and what does the fan base want to see? The big thing is more variety. There's a small number of battle items and held items, so hopefully we see some new ones added soon, as well as some more balance changes to the current ones in order to increase build variation. The new Pokemon Boost emblem system seems to have helped with this already. Some sort of draft system for ranked would help meta stalls from occurring for weeks at a time. Teamy's communication with the community is also noticeably absent, so hopefully that changes soon. Despite some heavy criticism from me, I'm overall very happy with the development of the game over the first year. Ever since release day, UNITE has been my #1 game that I play, and I'm still having fun with it. I think they got more right than they did wrong, but there also hasn't been much to do wrong since they haven't done much at all during the first year, which is my overall biggest criticism. Some urgent changes need to occur for the sake of this game's longevity, especially as Nintendo and Teamy push more towards esports territory. There was a lot of potential for UNITE, and I hope it gets explored much more in depth during its second year than it was during its first. Thank you so much for watching to the end. This is my first video on Pokemon UNITE, and I'm hoping to make more from here. I already have some more videos on this channel that you can watch right now. You can also find me live almost every night on Twitch at twitch.tv/TacoTitanPlays and on Twitter at twitter.com/TacoTitanPlays.